Hello and welcome to my CKY parsing Automata project presentation. My name is Jesus Ravelo. So my project description, I'm starting off with my CWID of 501692664 just to show that I'm ending in an even number. In this project, I've created a context-free grammar and converted it to a Chomsky normal form using the context of library operations as defined as in the project requirements. So the words are specific to TAMUC and they create sentences for library operations. I have 15 valid sentences and 3 invalid sentences. Each of these have a CKY table that's been created by hand, and then I went ahead and created some tables in PowerPoint and adjusted them. So these sentences have been passed through the CKY parser using Python, which is the language that I just chose, to validate whether they've been accepted or not. And so the output of each sentence has been added onto each slide that has the table on there. And so essentially each slide is going to have the table, whether it's passed or not, and also the steps and the operations that we went through. And so this is the CFG context-free grammar that I had created for this project. You can see I haven't split up between grammar and lexicon values. So our grammar is on the left-hand side and our lexicon values are on the right, and we'll have things like determinants, nouns, verbs, pronouns, proper nouns, auxiliary, and preposition. And so what I went ahead and did was I had this moved over to Chomsky normal form, and that gave us what we're seeing here. And so we see that S would be pointing to our verbs, nominal would be pointing to our nouns, and BP is pointing at our verbs as well. And so that was another thing that was also created from here would be Y1 and Y2 to accommodate for those in our CFG that had more than one terminal symbol on the right-hand side. And so here I have my list of accepted and non-accepted sentences. I have 15 accepted, as I mentioned earlier, and 3 not accepted sentences. Starting from the top, we have I wrote the science book. Can TAMUC have Joe on the shelf? Find me at TAMUC. Should John look for the pictures? Is that book by the shelf? So all words that would be found used in a library operations. And so that's what we have selected here. And so on the right-hand side, there's still a few more. I'm not going to go through all of them just for the sake of not reading them all. But on the right-hand side is where we have our invalid sentences. So by who is the book? Should I have that book? Look at the author at library. Look for the author. And so this is what our tables would look like for those that are accepted. And so looking at the first one here, I wrote the science book. We can see that with the table that we have created, it is accepted. And we can tell this by the S, which is essentially indicating that it is accepted on the furthest right. So 05 has an S indicating that this is accepted. And on this left-hand side, we have all of those subsequent steps that we had to take in order to get to the S, essentially, to find out that this string is accepted. And so going through the CKY parsing, this is the table that's been created. And so on the bottom, we have, I clicked in. We have input your sentence, type stop to stop. I wrote the science book, followed by yes, which is our Python code essentially telling us this string is accepted. And so I will go through the code at the end. I just wanted to include a screenshot in each slide for the sentence, showing that it either is or is not accepted in the code that was used to parse. Another example, can TAMUC have Joe on the shelf? Maybe not one that we'll go through all the way because of this one was one of the more complex ones. But you can see on the bottom that the input your sentence, we get a response of yes, indicating that this is accepted. And another way, the best way, the only way to check essentially in the table whether this is accepted is with this S on the top right hand side, 0.7. And we can see that through all of our calculation and combinations, we eventually get to S. Here's another example. Find me at TAMUC. So just going through, we have find as a verb, me as a pronoun, at as a preposition, and TAMUC as a proper noun. And so with those rules that we had created in our CFG, this is accepted, and this is what would output for these words. And so we're starting at the bottom, working our way up. So we'll start from left to right, and then we'll work our way bottom up. Sorry. And so we'll start with find, then we'll go down to me, and if any of our rules would be able to combine these, which we can, would be S and VP. Then we go through and do the same thing for 1 and 3, 1 and 2, 2 and 3. Get those combined. That doesn't work with anything. Going through to the next, 0, 3, and so on and so forth. So I won't go through all of these just because there is a decent amount. But I will essentially just kind of click through these, show the table, show the output, and of course the code parse indicating that it is accepted. And so all of these we can see are being accepted, indicated by this S. Look for the pictures on the shelf. This one was more complicated, but it was accepted. And here we reach our invalid sentences. So how do we know that this sentence is invalid just looking at the table? There is no S or start symbol at the end. So looking at library, sorry, let me go back up. There is no S indicating that this is accepted in our grammar. And so that would lead us to just understand that this is not accepted. So there's an X. And also coming down to our input, your sentence, our parse code on the bottom, there is a no indicating that it's not accepted. And the same goes for these next two here. By who is the book? Not accepted. Should I have that book at? Not accepted. And what we have next is our CKY parser code. Essentially, I just want to show where the code came from. It's not something that I created myself. It was one of the first that came up when I searched up CKY parser Python. So this was really easy to follow, really easy to understand. I think the hardest part about getting this running was figuring out the visual code on my computer. But that once I got that working properly, I was able to reformat my grammar into a format in a text file, essentially, that would be accepted by this code. And so I left a link on here in case you want to go through and take a look. But I will be going through the rest of the code in these next slides. So as I explained, I did go through and create a text file that has the grammar that I had defined in the beginning of the PowerPoint. And so you'll notice it's not in Chomsky normal form. This parser will go through and convert that grammar to Chomsky normal form, and then it will do the CKY parsing. And so here we're looking at the grammar file, starting with these top three. This is what's most obvious, showing us that it's not in CNF, it's in CFG, because of there being more than two terminal symbols. And then we have our lexicon values also. And so these were all essentially just split up by line. It couldn't be split up by the bracket, or not the bracket, the or symbol. Yeah. And so this is what the code looks like. this is the CKY parser file. And so it starts by importing the grammar converter, which is a module that is also its own separate file in the same folder. And so we'll go through that one as well. But essentially, we have a class that's storing all of our symbols. And then we're moving on to the parser itself. And then here, we'll actually see where the parser takes place for the CKY parsing algorithm. And then this is essentially what that output looks like. And then our main. Then moving on to the next file, the import essentially that we're doing on grammar converter. This is what essentially makes our grammar conversion possible. And so starting at the top, we'll go through and read the grammar from the file that we have defined for it, essentially, the one that has all my CFG. And then there's another function for adding rules, and then for actually converting the grammar itself. And so here we'll be able to see the removal of our unit productions, or is checking just to make sure that there's no more than 2. Sorry, I thought there was something else I wanted to cover up on here. Yeah, this is essentially the grammar that is used. I'm sorry, the parser that is used, and that I use to check whether the sentences I created were accepted or not accepted. And so I'm just going to go ahead and bring that up and just show what that looks like. We're looking at my Microsoft Visual Code, Studio Code. And so this is the CKY parse file we were just taking a look at. So it's the same things that we were seeing. And then here we've defined to look for the Grammarly text file in order to find my CFG. So we'll go into here, Grammarly. And this is how everything is split up. And then here we'll go into CKY parse. Oh, I'm sorry. This is our grammar converter file that we're importing. So I'll scroll up to the top here, import grammar converter. And so this has that module where we'll be able to call in these functions in our parsing. And so just as a quick test, I'll go ahead and do run. Oh, it's already running. So let's just run some sentences through the parser just to make sure that everything works the way we're expecting it to. Let's do, see, can I do, all right? Yeah. I wrote the science book. I wrote the science book. Yes, it is accepted. Find me at TAMUC. Yes, it's accepted. Let's do, what was one of these hard ones? Can TAMUC have Joe on this shelf? Let's look. Actually, I don't like the way that is. I'm not sure what to say. Can TAMUC have Joe on a shelf? No. On this shelf. Okay, so there's a typo there. Can TAMUC have Joe on this shelf? Yes, that is accepted. So there was a typo there. 2 typos, actually. I think the capital C in can would have triggered it to not be accepted. And the same thing goes for A not this, because A is a determinant and this is not a determinant. Let me just make sure I'm correct here. Can Joe have, yeah, preposition. So two different values, and so that's why it was not accepting that first time. Let's try another couple. The staff have a library. The staff have a library. Yes, that's accepted. Just screw this up. Let's go through a couple more. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. Is that book by the shelf? Is that book by the shelf? Yes. Move from that shelf for Joe. Move from that shelf for Joe. Oh, again, it says no because of the capital M in move, so let's just confirm that. Move from that shelf for Joe. And it is accepted. So yes, those capitals are, it is case sensitive, essentially. Look for the pictures on that shelf and read of the author we'll go with. Look for, oh, another case sensitivity that I'm overlooking. Read of the author. That is accepted. Do one more. Look for the pictures on that shelf. Look for the pictures on that shelf. These are all being accepted. So it's all looking good. I won't go through all of them, but I can go through all of the no's. So it's just a couple more, and we've already spent some decent amount of time going through this. I apologize. Let me bring this back up here. Look for the author at library. Look for the author at library. Look for the author at library. Not accepted. Let's look at another one. By who is the book, and should I have that book at? By who is that book? Should I have that book at? Should I have that book at? And so these were our three that we had identified as sentences that were not going to be accepted by our grammar. And as you can see through the code implementation, the parsing, it's not accepted. So, and all of those that we went through and did the test on for the valid sentences have been accepted. So I invite you to give this a shot with the sentences that I have. It's I'm going to be including the PowerPoint, the code itself, and the link to my YouTube video in my submission. So those files will also be included in here. Just go through and make sure there's nothing else I might have missed. But that is essentially the sentences I had created. This is the CFG we had converted to CNF. Let me take a look. You can come back here. We had converted from CFG to CNF. And then these are my 15 valid sentences, 3 invalid sentences. I went through most of them in our demo of the code. And I have a CKY table created for each instance of the sentences that we passed through, along with the output of whether they are accepted or not accepted. And so those have all been accurate from what we've seen. I invite you to test it. And we also, I've provided the CKY parser code and the grammar that I had used in that code, and also just the screenshots of what the code looks like, Again, it's not anything that I wrote myself, but it is something that I leveraged in this project. And so it was really interesting to see how it is actually coded, right? So instead of doing it manually, seeing how it works on in Python. And so that was pretty interesting to me. And yeah, I hope this is giving you all of the information you were looking for this project. I've listed here my references. In APA format, I couldn't really reference your notes in APA because of the D2L links, but I did use a lot of your notes in the for creating the grammar and CNF. So yeah, that's all been listed here, and I appreciate you for your time and for watching. Thank you.